Well, joining us live now is former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani. So what is your reaction to that image being removed and then restored pretty quickly?
Pam, I believe the criticism is warranted. First, the Department of Justice did not meet its Friday deadline. And it doesn't matter whether you're a DOJ prosecutor or you're in private practice, if you have a deadline, you meet that deadline. You don't show up on the day of the deadline and say you're not going to meet it and maybe complete the production in the next couple of weeks. And then you had images that were taken or removed and placed back. And obviously, what was the legal basis to do that? We know the only basis to withhold or redact images is to protect the identity of victims of sex abuse. And it certainly didn't seem like that was the reason why that picture was removed. And obviously, the redactions, some of which span hundreds and hundreds of pages, seem to be excessive. Pam, I wouldn't be surprised if House Democrats file a lawsuit this week to try to compel a federal judge to order an in-camera review outside the presence of the DOJ to make sure that these redactions are warranted and everything required by the Epstein Files Transparency Act is actually produced.
Yeah, that's the real question, right? I mean, because DOJ says, look, these redactions are to protect survivors. That picture was removed and put back up because we wanted to make sure that we weren't hurting any survivors. But how do you verify that, right? I mean, how do you verify that these redactions are actually related to what they are saying? And you have some in Congress that say Attorney General Pam Bondi should be held in contempt of Congress because not all the files were released as required by law. What is your view of that?
Well, I think contempt of Congress is certainly a possibility. Obviously, the Department of Justice typically enforces those contempt orders, so not really going to go anywhere. It's more political fodder than anything. That's why I think getting an Article III judge involved is the way to go. Typically what happens when there is a document withheld or redacted, there's a log that's provided. It's a privileged log. So there's a spreadsheet which identifies the legal basis to withhold or redact a document. And then if that is challenged, a judge will step in and a judge will review the documents. Now here, obviously, we're talking about thousands of files. A special master may have to be appointed. That's a retired judge that will comb through the documents to make sure that the redactions are appropriate, because there's really three broad categories that we're talking about here that may be the basis for redactions. I think, and I think members of Congress and the American people think, the only correct basis to withhold a redacted document would be to protect a victim of sex abuse. But there are grand jury materials that are typically secret. Judges that have considered that in the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell case have said that the act trumps the rules of criminal procedure that keep those proceedings secret, and I've started to unseal those grand jury records. But there's a third category, Pan, that I'm concerned about, and those are privileged documents. So we're talking about the law enforcement privilege when there's a pending investigation, the deliberative process privilege when an investigation is closed, and the executive privilege, which protects high-level communications between executive branch officials. You heard Todd Blanche say that the department is going to assert these privileges. I don't think that's consistent with the spirit of the act, and I certainly don't think that's consistent with what Bondi, Patel, and others have said about making the Epstein files public. This is an issue of transparency, and if you make a promise to the American people, you should fulfill that promise, not hide behind those privileges. So what we've seen so far is just a dump of Jeffrey Epstein's pictures. We want the FBI investigative memorandum, really the meat and potatoes of the Epstein case, really that discusses the sex abuse, not just pictures of Epstein with rich and famous people.
All right, Neama, thank you so much for offering your perspective on this.